thrown off a bit in terms of statements, opening statements, and then rejoinders. We started off with an opening statement and already a rejoinder.
It was inevitable.
Yeah.
Should we ask each other a question?
Yeah, why don't you do that with the idea, of course, that I think there's a lot of, shall I say, over-optimism floating around this room. One part of that over-optimism can be summed up in one word, confederation. The other bit of over-optimism, I think, can be summed up in this notion of settlements go up, settlements can come down.
Yeah.
So with that, why don't we let you ask Reza a question first? And
Do
then,
I not get to respond?
no, you, that's,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
would you like to? Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you take 5 minutes to respond?
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ibish. Just very, very quickly, I mean, it's important to kind of go through the ideas that Dr. Ibish said very quickly. Talked about UN 242. How'd that work out? Talked about the last round of negotiations between Olmert and Abbas. How'd that work out? He talked about the fact that, you know, huge majorities of Israelis and Palestinians support a two-state solution. It's true. Over the last decades, upwards of 90% of Israelis and nearly 80% of Palestinians have consistently said that they support the two-state solution. How'd that work out? This idea that what is politically done can be politically undone. Show me an example of that actually happening. Yes, we talk about the disengagement of Gaza, the unilateral disengagement of Gaza, which I can't find anything positive to say about. I mean, I think Jon Stewart said it best. It's the difference between occupying somebody's apartment and occupying the hallway and locking the door and locking the residents in the apartment. Okay, there's really no difference between those two. What it does is it's allowed Israel, and this was, I think, Sharon's deliberate plan, to focus not on the cesspool of human waste that is Gaza, but on the West Bank, which is what he really wants. By the way, 600,000 settlers. I'm counting East Jerusalem because it counts. This notion of, you know, why do I say good riddance? Well, I say good riddance for a very important reason that was brought up. And that is that this notion that we already have a one-state solution. I agree. The reason I say good riddance to the two-state solution is the sooner we recognize that we already have a one-state solution, the sooner we can actually move it towards a sense of equity, that we can actually bring about this confederation that I speak of. And by the way, I don't think that the confederation is going to come out like, you know, of a flower. I think it's going to come out of intense bloodshed. In fact, if you want me to be honest with you, I think that what we are going to see is a process through which the demographic balance tips into apartheid, ethnic cleansing, until finally you have international mediation that leads to confederacy. And finally, let me just say that this idea about political will, that what can be politically done can be politically undone. What the political will in Israel has shown, particularly over the last decade, is the exact opposite. There's no desire whatsoever in the political establishment in Israel to actually create a two-state solution, to actually create a safe and secure Palestine. And yes, it's true, Costa Rica doesn't have a military, but Costa Rica hasn't been repeatedly bombed and invaded by its neighbor. Costa Rica, however, does have control of its sea routes, of its airspace, of its immigration policy, all of which Palestine would have to have for it to be actually considered a state.
Of course.
But what we have is demographics, Russian immigrants who have no interest in a Palestinian state, ultra-Orthodox who have no interest in a Palestinian state, an Israeli populace that is veering dangerously to the right, a prime minister who becomes more and more popular the more extreme he gets. So the idea that there is political will in Israel, or for that matter political will in the United States, to reverse this policy, and that's what we would have to have. We would have to have put on the brakes and a complete U-turn, to me seems like a fantasy. There is no political will in America. There is no political will in Israel. There's no desire to make the sacrifices necessary to make a two-state solution happen.
Well, I actually don't disagree with that last bit that you said. It is conceivable to have a kind of one-state outcome. if you are willing to endure, and on behalf of the people who will have to go through it, the rivers of blood, ethnic cleansing, what were some of the other wonderful things you conjured up?
International mediation.
No, it was that, but before that was rivers of blood and ethnic cleansing.
Apartheid.
Apartheid, thank you, yes, we already, not too far from that. Don't like the word, but yeah, rivers of blood and ethnic cleansing. Right, so, sure. I mean, obviously, if you posit another 100 years, or even 80 years, of incredible conflict, getting worse and worse and worse, the way that the Second Intifada was worse than the First Intifada, and the way that the Gaza war was worse than the Second Intifada, and on until both sides are decimated and exhausted, and the international community intervenes and just prizes them apart. Although, if there's ethnic cleansing, I don't know why, if it comes to that, I don't know why a nuclear Israel couldn't repeat 48 and change those demographics we were talking about. If it comes to that, the point I want to make is I can agree with you. If I wanted to exercise a radical dystopian imaginative leap of that kind, if I wanted to be Hieronymus Bosch of Israel and the Palestinians, sure, I can arrive at your conclusion after all of this horror. Well, I'm not willing to go there. I'm not in the least bit interested in that. Even if it turns out you were right, I would be proud to stand here and tell you that I am not going to acquiesce to making that happen, because that will happen as a result of collective decisions that are made by human beings, right? History is nothing but a genealogy of human choices. And I agree with you about blaming all the sides, and particularly the settlement movement, for the situation that we're in now. And I agree with you right now, nobody expects negotiations and anything to come out soon. But I think that there are questions of national interest that are deep-seated, that ultimately, let's put it this way, societies very frequently come to the conclusions they don't want to come to after they've exhausted all other possible alternatives. And we haven't reached that point yet, I think, with the Israelis and even with the Palestinians, so they're sticking with it. And I am determined to work against the scenario you laid out, because it's so hideously ugly and involves so much death and so much bloodshed, by your own admission. And I don't think I'm being a Pollyanna here. I think what you're engaging in is the easiest thing in the world, which is absolute cynicism about everything to do with the Middle East. You will never lose, right? I mean, that's the winning gamble every time. If you want to say about the Middle East, how'd that work out for you? How'd that work? Of course, I mean never in the Middle East. Not just between Israel and the Palestinians. Syrian uprising, how's that working out for you? You know, Gaddafi overthrown, oh boy, how's that working out for you in the Zintan brigades and in the Tripoli airport? Boy, how's Egyptian elections? Yeah, how's that working out for you? It's no problem. Yeah, that's so easy, right? To be cynical about the Middle East
for 60 years.
60 years, 80 years, 100 years, whatever. To be cynical about the Middle East is very easy, and you will be right at least 95% of the time, and it's great. Okay? I'm not interested in it, because I think each individual has a responsibility to fight for something better than rivers of blood and ethnic cleansing and apartheid and all that.